Lutris is always one of those programs that the Linux community always recommends, and even now it's recommended for the Steam Deck. That said, the Flatpak is now out of beta. So how does it work? Common knowledge dictates that you should take your exe files and add them directly to Steam, force it to run using Proton, and then just running your games that way. Common knowledge dictates that you would also do the same if you have an installer. You would just add the installer as its own Steam game, and then after that you would take that shortcut and redirect it to the exe file that you just installed. For my Windows non-Steam games, I can't say I'm a huge fan of this. First and foremost, I can't say I'm a huge fan of this because you don't really know where your Proton prefix lives. A prefix is more or less a full replica of the Windows file system. You've got your full C drive, you've got your users folder, you've got your program files folder, you've got all of that stuff. It's meant to mimic an entire Windows install, because each library only really loads up the system components that they need. When you run a game through Steam, each game has their own Proton prefix. This isn't really a detailed explanation of what a prefix actually is, but more or less, yeah, it's a replica of your Windows file system that a game recognizes. This is necessary because there's no standardization on where Windows games save their save files. That's not my main issue with compatibility data. My issue with compatibility data is that it's organized by a game's game ID. For Steam games, it's arranged by their game ID on Steam itself. And if you have multiple non-Steam games added directly via Steam, you can't even tell which one's the game you're looking for, unless you use Proton Tricks, that is. Proton Tricks is a useful program in and of itself, but ultimately, I don't want to use it to manage non-Steam games. So yes, that's why I use programs like Lutris and Bottles and Heroic Games Launcher to manage my non-Steam, non-Linux games. And yes, I am aware of a command that you can add to Steam games and non-Steam games in Steam to have their prefixes elsewhere. But I really don't feel like using that, okay? It's just a lot easier for me to use Lutris. Downloading and installing Lutris is as easy as any other Flatpak now. Just go into the Discover App Store and install Lutris. Once you've done that, go ahead and launch Lutris. I'm gonna level with you. Lutris has changed quite a bit since we last covered it. Not only does the Flatpak have a stable release instead of a beta release, but it's easily accessible to anyone now. You can just go into Discover and look it up and download it, with very little in the way of issues. As you can see here, Lutris now has an Ubisoft Connect and Origin tab. So let's start by installing Origin and an Origin game. You'll want to click on that person icon next to Origin, so you can log into your Origin account. Lutris will prompt you to install Origin, and you'll want to follow the instructions on the screen. The installation process is very straightforward. All you have to do is just follow the instructions as prompted. You'll get to a point where you actually log in with your EA account through Origin itself, so go ahead and do that. And as you can see here, I'm already logged in. Once Origin is launched, you'll actually want to exit Origin so that Lutris can finish the installation. It's kind of a weird system. I'm not entirely sure why this is the case, but it is. Now here's Lutris' new party trick. Click on that person icon to launch an Origin login screen. You'll want to log in again, but this time, all of your games will be synchronized to Lutris. And would you look at that, all of your Origin games are listed right here. Let's go ahead and try to install one. I'm going to install Peggle because I'm in the mood to play some Peggle, honestly. The instructions are a little less straightforward, but all you have to do is follow the instructions. Press install, it'll detect that Origin's already installed, and now it's gonna launch Origin. Origin will launch itself and it'll attempt to install Peggle. To make things a lot easier, you'll want to change the install location. Click change location, and then you'll want to go into my computer, go into the Z drive, and then there's your Linux file system. Go into home, and then deck, and there you'll see your Linux user directory. I made a games folder in this Linux directory, and that's where I store a lot of my non-Steam games. Once you get that set up, all you have to do is press next and continue on. And yes, you will have to agree to a EULA. Believe it or not, you can't play a video game nowadays without signing a contract. And let the game install. And now that it's installed, you'll want to exit Origin. This is so Lutris can detect that you installed Peggle properly, or whatever game it is you installed. Just give it a moment to finish its thing and it should be done. Your Origin game is now installed. and you could launch it directly from Lutris. But that's not why you're here. You want to launch it from game mode, and we'll do that in a second. Now let's install some Ubisoft titles. Installing Ubisoft titles is very similar to installing Origin and Origin titles. Click on that person icon beside Ubisoft Connect and you'll be prompted to install Ubisoft Connect. Believe it or not though, installing Ubisoft Connect was a lot easier. It didn't have that weird step where you had to launch Origin, log into Origin, and then exit Origin to finish the installation. It just installed. So what you want to do is launch Ubisoft Connect and then go ahead and log into Ubisoft Connect. Once you do that, you'll want to click on that person icon next to Ubisoft Connect, and then you'll be prompted to log in again. Yeah, this is going to be a recurring theme of logging in twice, so just be sure to do so. You have plenty of ways to log in, though I'm not going to use any of them. And as you can see here, I skipped and logged in. I'm always surprised by the fact that I have so many games in each launcher, despite the fact that I don't really spend money in these launchers. As you can see here, we're going to install Scott Pilgrim vs. the World again. I've actually installed this game in a prior video, but you know what? I'm going to do it again because this is a good game. When you attempt to install a Ubisoft game from Lutris, it'll just launch Ubisoft Connect, and then you'll just have to manually install it yourself. Kind of a similar process to installing Origin titles through Lutris, except, you know, it's Ubisoft. So yes, Ubisoft Connect to launch, and then you have to install your designated game. In this case, we chose Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, Complete Edition. And we're gonna install it. And like with the Origin game you installed earlier, you want to change the folder location. As you can see here, your Linux file system lives in the Z drive. This is gonna be a recurring theme, by the way. And just let the game install. This game actually isn't that big, so it'll install fairly quickly. Once Scott Pilgrim vs. the World finishes installing, you want to exit Ubisoft Connect so that Lutris finishes up the installation. This is going to be a recurring theme as well. So as you can see here, the Lutris installation is finishing up, and as you can see here, it's finished now. If you try to launch the Lutris shortcut, whether it's in game mode or desktop mode, as it is, you're just going to get this screen and nothing's going to happen. For whatever reason, Lutris seems to put in the wrong argument. That's not the game ID whatsoever. Linked in the description below is a handy list of Uplay IDs. Just replace the faulty one with the correct one in Lutris and you should have a working game. And as you can see now, launching it from game mode, the game works just fine. Yeah, it takes a minute to boot. Just, you know, just wait. So back to regular old Lutris. You may notice GOG or Steam or Epic Games. We're not going to use any of those tabs because, quite frankly, there are better solutions for that. Using Steam through Lutris is a non-starter, and for Epic Games and GOG games, we have the Heroic Games Launcher. I made a totally separate video about Heroic Games Launcher a while ago, so you should check that out. One overlooked Lutris feature is the ability to install a Windows game through, you guessed it, an installation file. It could be a .exe file or it could be a .msi file. Just follow the instructions on the screen here. I'm doing this for a game called HoloCure, which I made a video about. You should check that out in the description below. It's like Vampire Survivors, but free and anime. You can literally select an installation file. In this case, I have a .msi file, but a .exe file works as well too. And as you can see now, Lutris is working its magic. Lutris setting up the wine prefix is taking longer than actually installing the game. So as you can see here, now that the wine prefix is set up, we can now run the installer. Just follow the instructions. As you can see here, for some reason this installer doesn't see any drive outside of C. I'm not sure as to why that is, but that's okay, we know our directory anyways. We're just going to manually type in our directory, and that's that. HoloCure is installed. Stop the tapes. Don't try HoloCure through Lutris. For whatever reason, the sound effects don't work. Also, the launcher really doesn't like DXVK. So like, yeah, that's a thing. That said, if you disable DXVK and run HoloCure through Bottles, it'll work just fine. But Bottles isn't Lutris, so that'll be a separate video. But yeah, this whole segment here was to demonstrate that you can run installers, MSI installers, or .exe installers. And to add these games to Steam, we're going to be using Boiler. I would not recommend using the Flatpak version of Boiler, as there's certain limitations. Instead, I would opt for using the standalone version, which is easily downloaded from the GitHub page. In the Boiler settings, you'll want to select Import from Lutris and select Import from Flatpak. Make sure the Flatpak image reads exactly as stated. If there's 2 slashes and a beta after it, delete the 2 slashes and the beta after it. Once you've set up all of your images and stuff, you should go ahead and start the imports. And there you go, all of your titles you installed with Lutris will show up in your Steam library. Like Peggle. Have you ever played Peggle before? Peggle's awesome, dude. You should definitely play it. So what did we learn today? Well, we learned how to use Lutris and how to add games from Lutris to your Steam library. I may cover Bottles at some point though. Now you may be asking what the heck Bottles is. Well, Bottles is a program that's quite similar to Lutris, but different. Bottles is a bit different in which you can use it to manage non-gaming programs as well. And while you can do that for Lutris, Lutris was specifically designed for video games. I'm probably going to make a video on Bottles at some point and compare and contrast Bottles to Lutris on Steam Deck. We finally relaunched our Patreon page, so be sure to check us out if you want to support us. Promise we'll start doing exclusive content soon. If you like high-tech low-life, you should subscribe and check out my other videos. And for more high-tech low-life updates, be sure to join our Discord server in the description below.